here. I always love to start with, let's just get a quick 90-second one. Who are you? What's your company's name? And what do you guys do?
Yeah, so my name is Sam Payrovi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Arkhaus, and we are transforming waterways into destinations. And we do that by developing and building these very specialized yachts called villas. They look more like real estate homes than they look like yachts, but they have some very unique technologies built into them, which makes them unlike anything else. And because of that, we can deploy waterfront resorts, social clubs, hospitality efforts, and a variety of things. And that's basically what Arkhaus does.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I have kind of been around your project. I've seen it for over the last couple of years. I've seen a lot of growth. I would love for our listeners to know kind of the aha moment where you decided that you're jumping into this type of world and starting to work on it. So kind of what's the origin story of all this?
Yeah, so I was actually investment banking background, and I left finance to create another startup, which was in the retail tech world. It was almost like a POS technology. That business, the concept, the retail footprint of that became a hospitality business known as Custom House. I met my co-founder while we were building that out. And in 2021 or in 2020, we had a New York location in the meatpacking. We came down and we opened up a second location in Miami at the Faena Hotel, rooftop, glass atrium, private social club, co-working space, beautiful. And we really were trying to figure out where to put this thing permanently in Miami. And there was no neighborhood that was really getting us excited. And
Right.
I spoke with my co-founder. I said, "Hey, what do you think about putting this on a solar electric yacht?" And she basically just laughed at me. She's like, "No, no chance." And then one day she saw me looking at another type of a solar electric yacht called an Arcup. And, this boat has been on Netflix. It's been on Drake videos and a variety of other things, world's greatest vacation rentals. And she said, "Well, that's different. That's not a yacht." And I said, "Actually, technically it is a yacht." And so we decided to partner with them and say, "Hey, can we build a hospitality venue out on the middle of the water?" And so for the first 2, 3 years of the business, that's what we were. We were really focused on just the hospitality side of it, building a social club. The business has changed materially now in the last year or so. But when we saw that we could take a solar and electric boat, which is already a game changer, and then this boat lifts itself out of water, another game changer, right? You don't rock
Yeah.
whatsoever in the middle of the
Right.
bay. We knew we had something, and that's when we decided to pull the trigger and move forward in 2021.
When you're giving a quick pitch of this, I mean, what are you sort of like, how are you getting people to kind of visualize this? I've looked at it, I've seen it, but for our listeners right there who are not looking at it, like, how are you getting them to visualize this? I mean, it's a houseboat on steroids to some degrees. You have sort of buzzwords that you use. The yacht, obviously, you just use like it's a yacht, not this. So is there some terminology that really helps kind of describe this? But how do you sort of really give that picture for the people who can't see it right now?
Yeah, it's funny. The interesting fact that you use the houseboat on steroids is a pretty good, descriptor. The reality is it's not a houseboat. It is actually a yacht. And the primary difference between those two is, do you have propulsion and do you move around or not? Most houseboats don't. And this, just from a design perspective, from a technology perspective, light years ahead of what a traditional houseboat is, and in many cases, more than most yachts. Uh, but ultimately, what it is a 2,200 square foot platform that is solar powered and runs on an electric motor to propel itself. But the most important thing is that, unlike a yacht, which sits in water and rocks, it lifts out of the water. And so it is effectively like a platform. It's almost like your own little island.
Hmm.
And so the correct name for this category is called a villa yacht, or a livable
Hmm.
yacht, as some people will call it. And I think in the next few years, people are going to be pretty excited to see where we take this, because we're coming out with different designs of the villa yachts,
Yeah.
different sizes and different uses.
How much has like new technology breakthroughs allowed this idea to come to light? I mean, are we in the last few years, have we just seen major changes, or is it something that's been around for a while? We just haven't kind of put the pieces together. What does sort of the technology world look like in this space?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, when you think about a boat, while we always say that the primary innovation in these vessels is its self-elevating capability, but what's really made the big technological advancement is not that. It's actually the solar electric aspect of it. And the reality is Tesla and EVs are what have enabled that. When you think about a boat moving through water burns exponentially more energy than a car. And uh, when it does that, obviously you can't have batteries work. But what's happened is, with the advent of EVs and the battery developments, we now can have electric boats. And the reality is, on a boat, your primary expense besides staffing is maintenance.
Hmm.
A fuel motor has to be serviced every 100 hours, and it'll only last 3 to 5,000 hours total.
Mm-hmm.
An electromotor goes 100,000 hours, so about 25 times as long, and doesn't need to be serviced once. And so, but battery technology had to catch up so that you could use electric motors. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what's happened now thanks to EVs.
That's interesting. Now, is the concept that you guys are going for that this boat is constantly moving through the ocean, or is it something that you drive it out to an area, you set it, and you have a party? What's sort of what do you guys visualize the use? How are people using the boats?
Yeah. So they're not ocean going. They're designed for intracoastal waters, protected
Mm,
waters. So bays like Biscayne Bay in Miami, New York Harbor, lakes, rivers, etc. And the primary use is less about propelling around and really more about enjoying the environment. The great thing about these boats, when you do propel around, there's no noise. It's an electric motor, just like a Tesla. So you don't
sure, right.
hear the rumble and the roar of the motor. You're actually hearing the environment around you. But ultimately, the purpose of these vessels is to have a hospitality forward space, whether you're living on it, enjoying it for the weekend, or using it for a commercial purpose, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And so the idea is you move it out to where you want it, set it up. It takes like 10 minutes to set up. It's amazing. You spud down, the vessel lifts out of water in 10 minutes. The decks open up and you're hanging out. You go over to an island, enjoy the day, go back. Now that's a recreational use. We see two different deployments for these vessels. One is a private customer will buy this, put it behind their house or at a marina. If they do it at their house, it'll be an extension of their home. They now have a guest house or a hospitality space sitting on the backside of their yard, right? And then they take it out for the day. That's what, you imagine taking your guest house into the middle of the water and bringing it back. That's
Right.
effectively what we get
Yeah.
to do. The second deployment is really for a commercial purpose. And that's actually what we are also doing. So besides building and selling the boats, we will actually deploy them into a waterfront or an overwater resort network. I'm going to try to get out of the sun a
Yeah.
little bit here.
Yeah. No problem.
Um, yeah. So, and that resort network is really kind of what we're focused on building now. It's what you see in the Maldives or Bali or Tahiti. Again, those fixed huts that you're way out into the water, stay on it overnight. But what you can do with ours is that during the day, you can take it out, go to an
Uh-huh.
island, have a fresh seafood catch lunch, and then come back to
Great.
your hotel suite.
And is that how I think I saw this a couple times on the site, thinking about sort of floating districts or, mini little cities that sort of could pop up. I mean, is that like a big picture that you sort of see in terms of how to kind of where this could be going?
Yeah. That's a very long lead focus
Yeah.
of ours. The reality is when you think about these vessels, because of the fact that they spud down and elevate out of water and become completely solid platforms, you can actually put two of them together. Normally, when you put two boats together, they rock. They're in water.
Yeah.
And when they
Right.
rock, they beat each other up all
Yeah.
day, every day. You
Yeah.
can't put two boats together for more than a few hours. With these boats, you can lift them up and they actually technically don't even touch. They're just 6 inches apart from each other and they stay in that exact perfect configuration. But
Huh.
because of this, we can actually put two together. We can put 10, 20, 50, or 100 together and one day 1,000 together.
Wow.
The unique thing about that is that gives us the ability to not just build resorts with these vessels today, but one day down the line, floating infrastructure in the form of waterborne districts or eventually one day
Yeah.
waterborne cities. And there are
Right.
quite a few waterborne city efforts happening around the world. And so we think we're going to, get our feet wet in those.
Huh. It's like a new Venice, like
Yeah, exactly.
building
Yeah.
these boats, these little villas. Let's
Yeah.
flip over a little bit around the sort of just the business model itself. And I know that you've kind of gone between hospitality, a little bit of real estate, just boat infrastructure, right? That type of stuff. So I guess how do you sort of think about this business model? How is it shifting and changing that you kind of just mentioned a little bit? I'd just like to talk a bit about just the business itself and where you sort of see it right now and where it's going.
Yeah, well, there's been a little bit of change as well. When we launched Arkhaus in 2021, we were really just purely a hospitality business. Obviously, very tech forward and very different than most hospitality businesses. But ultimately, we were building a floating social club aboard these very specialized solar electric yachts. Last year, we had the opportunity to actually acquire our boat builder. And that completely changed the trajectory of where we're going. That acquisition meant that we were now not only vertically integrated, but we controlled any redesign, build, production schedule, who has access to the boats and who doesn't. Our
Mm.
moat around, do we want another competitor to have access to
Oh
these,
yeah.
or are we the only? What sizes do we want to create? How fast do we want to deploy them? Where do we want to deploy them? And what we realized pretty quickly was, yes, we effectively just became a boat builder, but the first thing I knew as a boat builder is I don't want to be a boat builder. So we handed off the build to the best boat yard in America called Lyman Morse up in Maine. And then we said, we now have the ability to do a much more scalable hospitality concept. And so we shifted a little bit out of the social club aspect, which you can only have so many social clubs around the world. And we moved
Hmm.
over into this Overwater villa resort network. So we're building something that looks more along the lines of like a Six Senses hotel or a Habitas or a Bodega hotel. You'll start to see these resorts pop up in cities like Miami. In a place like Miami, we might just have 4 of them, 6 of them just sitting at the end of a marina. Down in the Florida Keys, you might see a full flagship resort with 20 to 30 rooms on land with 10 to 15 boats out on water, one cohesive experience. And then we'll see how that evolves over time. In a place like Dubai or Singapore or the Maldives, you might see a mega resort, 50 to 100 boats in a shape that's something along the lines of, the Palm Islands.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's great.
Dramatically
What?
smaller, not that big, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess at this point, like, what does revenue sort of look like? Like, what's the business model here? Like, is it renting the boats, obviously selling the boats? Is it just the hospitality? What does revenue sort of look like in this space?
Yeah. So we generate basically 2 lines of revenue, and I'll tell you where those have been and where they're going. And then there is a double dip aspect here, which is why we're setting up our business model the way we are. The first of those is that as a hospitality business, and I apologize, the sun just is going to chase me all day
It's
long.
chasing you.
It
It's
seems
gonna move. It's
it's
gonna keep
it's just
moving you.
going to keep chasing. The first of those revenue lines is the hospitality business. We launched aboard our first 2 units about a year ago. Those 2 units, because they're only recreationally classified and not commercial, we're very, very limited in the capacity we can have on board and what we can do. Nonetheless, operating one day a week on one vessel at a time, we did 600K of revenue. So if you extrapolated that up, times 2 boats, times 7 days, you're talking, into the multiple millions. But again, ultimately, the social club wasn't our focus. Now that we've acquired the boat brand, we will have a sales revenue of how we build and sell the boats, as well as a hospitality revenue. On the sales revenues, these boats are about $1.75 million on average, and we generate about a 30% margin on those. So, call it 200 something thousand dollars per vessel. On the hospitality side, the overnight stays on these vessels, because they're so unique, we believe they're going to be in the low 3,000s per night. And that's not because it's a hotel suite. It's because you're also getting your day boat as well,
You're right.
combined
Right.
experience. And so each unit will generate about 65,000 per month, which nets down to about 25,000 net for us per month,
Mm, mm.
after all expenses. So if you have a resort that has, let's say, 10 units, you're generating 250,000 net per month, right? Or about 3 million per year. That's just on 10 boats. That's a small
Right.
resort.
Yeah.
The double dip is because we build the boats, we don't just hand them over to the resort. We sell them to the resort. So the boat building side gets the margin up front. The
Hmm.
resort side has a recurring revenue stream ongoing for the life of the vessel. And so that's our
Right.
double dip. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why we will always prioritize a resort build over a third party build. So the resort will
Sure.
basically get its first priority on, we need X amount of boats for these cities. And then if we have production slot availabilities, a third party customer can fill that in.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned some of the second ago I want to dive into, but I do want to come back to some of this more business model stuff. What is regulations in this space? You mentioned it, just like we can only do so many things on these boats, right? What does that mean? Can you get a little more detail on what regulations sort of look like in these different verticals?
Yeah. So I'll tell you from a use perspective and then from a capacity perspective. On a use perspective, US waters and most global waters are free and clear for recreational and commercial use. I have people always ask me, wow, what was the permitting on this?
Yeah.
There is none. It doesn't
Oh,
exist. There
it's
is
crazy.
nothing to
Interesting.
permit. You are free to put a boat into water and use it recreationally or commercially right now, no questions asked. Now, recreational is a lot easier. If you want to do commercial, you have to have a commercial vessel. And so while we can put our recreational boats anywhere and run limited operations on them, we can only have 6 people aboard those at a time. It's called a 6-pack operation. That's
Interesting.
tiny. These boats are
Yeah.
rated 40 people. So
Right.
having 6 people on a 40-person boat, it's not
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
experience you're looking for. But
Right.
ultimately, that's the first 2 boats we received were recreational. And then we'll move up into the commercials where each boat will have a capacity of 40, dramatically more revenue. The interesting thing is the social club, what we had been focused on over the last few years, that requires commercial vessels, but the resort club actually does not. And so
Interesting.
we can rapidly build recreational vessels right now without having Coast Guard approve them, commercial approval. And that's actually what we need for the resort club. So when I said the resort club is dramatically more scalable, this is actually exactly why it's
Yeah.
dramatically more scalable is one, it doesn't need to be commercially certified. It's a recreational vessel. You can build them faster. There's more uses for them. You can put them in more places. But then there's a membership aspect to it. Sorry, I'm getting away from your regulatory
Yeah. No, it's
question.
all good. All good.
But when we were focused on the social club, our first location was Miami. I can only sell memberships to Miami customers, right? Because that's who's going to use that social club. When we build the resort club, you can sell memberships globally and people will pay a small nominal fee to be part of that membership. So they have access to it with very limited supply initially. And you build up the membership, which stabilizes your demand. But now we can do membership sales globally and market globally, which dramatically expands our market footprint.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Just speaking of that market opportunity, you just kind of led to my next question. There's so many coastal cities in the world. Where do you see like an actual expansion plan that makes sense, right? Like, okay, we could go here and here. This would make sense. It would the demographics would make sense. I mean, obviously, we're talking a lot about Miami right now, and that all makes sense.
Right.
Of the right area. Where do you sort of see, a second, a third? I know you mentioned Dubai a couple times on this, but what is like a plan of expansion in your mind right now?
So when we really think about where we want to expand the resorts, the first thing is look to see where other companies and other waterfront resorts have expanded and did basically ensure that the market spend capability supports. But the second and probably even maybe even more important aspect of it is depths, water depths. So these vessels can spud down in up to 15 feet of water. And so there is a lot of the world that is under 15 feet of water, a lot of coastlines, et cetera. But you have certain places where this doesn't work. So as much as I would love to do Santorini, Santorini is basically a volcanic island, right? And so when you hit
Okay.
the
Yeah.
water, you're on a slope that's at this angle and you are not going to hit the bottom anywhere soon.
Right. Right.
And so we have to look for protected bodies of water that have good shallow waters and then the local economy and the aesthetics support it. So I'll give you a few places in the US, of course, Miami, Charleston, South Carolina, the Hamptons, San Diego, Newport Beach, Catalina Island off California, the Florida Keys, Palm Beach, Sarasota, Tampa, lakes like Lake Tahoe, your nicer lake environments definitely work. And then when you start going international, there are areas around Mykonos that work, Turkey, Bodrum, Singapore, Dubai, Maldives, Bali, Tahiti. Then a lot of your waterfront cities actually have shallow areas. Sydney does,
Yeah.
Melbourne does, and on and on. But that's where you would see this. So you're going to see a flavor of these resorts that's more the city waterfront, and you're going to see a
Hmm.
flavor of them that's more off the beaten path, Maldives, Bali, Tahiti.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see like I'm in Michigan? Do you see lakes and stuff like that too, or is it really more built for ocean stuff? I mean, I'm like Lake Michigan, Chicago. I mean, does that work too? Those type of areas?
It does from a demand perspective, but those areas are seasonal, right? So Traverse
Yeah. So
City could perfectly work,
yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
But you would have a 6 month window, more or less. And that's fine. I wouldn't prioritize those early on just because of that
Sure.
seasonality. But
Yeah.
do I think that eventually you could do 2 boats and have a 6 month season and,
Hmm.
you peel your staff off into off 6 months? Absolutely.
Yeah.
One really interesting thing about these is that in the end, they are boats and boats can move. And
Right.
so to the extent that we can transport them from one location to another, you can run two parallel regions with the same set of boats. So
Sure. Yeah.
For example, I can't say the name, but we were working with a Formula One team to build a hospitality structure for Monaco and the Mediterranean or Europe races. We talked about doing a second one in the Middle East and the Gulf. So you had Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi. But then we said, well, those seasons are kind of juxtaposed. So why do we need to build two footprints? Use it here
Yeah,
six
right.
months, transport it there for 6 months, and we can do that back and forth. The boat can
Yeah,
go under its own power, or it can actually just be transported on a ship.
sure.
And so going back to your question, there are scenarios where we have discussed that you could do a boutique resort somewhere just a hairline outside of New York City,
Hmm.
City Island, let's say, or off Brooklyn or Queens. And then in the winter, those vessels can actually come down the Intracoastal Waterway, spend a week in Baltimore, a week in DC, et cetera, Charleston, Savannah, get to
Yeah,
Jacksonville, Florida, and then work their way back up. And so there's a lot of
right.
flexibility to move them around. The other
Ah, it's crazy. It's amazing.
modular
That's cool.
aspect of
Yeah,
this is if we do a resort and we see there's more demand, it's very easy to add to it. If we
mm,
see that we built something too big, it's very easy to peel off half of the boats
sure.
and
Yeah.
send them to your next resort. And so
Hmm.
the modular aspect of this, which allows us to scale up and down endlessly, is what land-based fixed structures can't do.
Yeah, it really is. The more that we talk about it, it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of places to go down. So I want to talk a little bit about fundraising right now. So we're connecting right now because you're over on Wefunder again. I think this would be the second raise, if I'm not mistaken. I guess talk a little bit not about just your deal or the specifics, but just what's the concept and thought behind bringing this to a platform like that, looking for retail investors. Just what's some of the early conversations as to why you want to go down this as a funding channel.
So the reason we did it in our first round is different than the reason we're doing it now. In our first round, it was really a way for our community of members, our community of ambassadors and people who were just excited about it to participate if they didn't want to be a member or if they didn't live in Miami and couldn't be a member, right?
Hmm.
It is a visually eye-catching concept, and a lot of people do reach out and say, "How do I get to be a part of this?" A crowdfunding round was the obvious answer. So we did a round in 2022, and that was really our pre-seed round. But then we came back last year and we said, let's actually do our seed round on here. And we actually ran a simultaneous Reg D, Reg CF seed round. So Reg D is a
Hmm.
private raise from angel investors. Reg CF is from, the crowdfunding. And in this current round, we've raised $1.1 million at a $25 million valuation.
Hmm.
That round is still open, but we've been trying to figure out where do we go next. We are going to raise a $10 million post-seed or A round soon.
Hmm.
We may do that ASAP. We may hold off a bit. But what I'm seeing is the resort concept that we've recently developed into has so much legs and so much interest from institutional partners. And I'm talking
Yeah.
about the largest resort companies in the world and the largest hospitality management companies in the world and big resort investors.
Hmm.
We're saying, well, why should we raise that 10 million now? Why don't we push that off, raise a little bit more with our community through the Reg CF raise?
Hmm.
When the first resort opens up, our valuation is going to spike.
Yeah.
So let's wait to raise that $10 million round when that happens. And then we won't be raising that at 30. We'll be raising it at 50, 75, or 100, depending on what we've done.
Hmm.
I think we're leaning towards that. We're going to keep the crowdfunding round open a little bit longer, and keep going with that. It's covering our operating capital and we're very happy with how, the trajectory has panned out on it. But at some point, there's going to be an investor who's going to come in and make us an offer and we're going to say, okay, we're going to close this round down and move into the institutional side.
Have you seen any trend in the type of investor, whether it's people who just really, well, I'm gonna back up here. Obviously, there's this resort world that you just talked about. Big money, just there's certain people that just know that space. But right now, do you see that it is people that just kind of understand hospitality more, understand, building boats and just that sort of business that's kind of happening? Or is it just a combo of everything and it's not really as specific as I'm thinking right now?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It actually is not I'll say this, the smaller check crowdfunding investors, let's call it under 5,000, are There's no rhyme or reason. It's everybody who's just interested in the concept. Once you start to get into the 5, 10,000, 40, 50, we've had a couple of $100,000 checks. That generally ends up being either a member or somebody local here in Miami who's just really into the concept, or a potential partner who
Mm,
gets very excited. So
yeah.
yeah, there's like this delineation of 5K below and above.
Yep, yep, yeah. And do you see right now, like, maybe 1 or 2 big milestones that will push some of are there 1 or 2 things that if these happen, they will push you in different directions on just fundraising in general? I mean, you're kinda hinting at, "Hey, if this happens, we'll go here, we'll keep this long," but are there big milestones that you think, "If these happens, we'll go here or here?" Like, is there anything like that happening right now?
Yeah, there's one, and that one is the development of our first flagship resort. That flagship resort, I mentioned there's multiple iterations. You might have a few at a marina, a few with a partnered hotel. Flagship resort is our own resort, land-based and water-based combined. The whole thing is Arkhaus.
Mm, mm,
When we get all of the partners involved, and we have most of them, there's only 1 or 2 partners that remain to pull that off. Those guys are going to want to not only fund the resort as a standalone SPV, which will be under Arkhaus, but they're also going to want to invest in the parent entity. And that's when I think the larger $10 million raise is going to kick in. That resort, the management operator, and probably the sponsor of the deal, which is the owner of the land or the hotel, they'll probably each put in somewhere between 500K to a million. So you
mhm,
could call that anywhere between 1.5 to 3 million. We have another 5 of it sourced. 2 of it is one of our existing investors, and 3 of it is most likely coming from venture debt from the bank that we bank
mm,
with.
mhm,
And, once those resort partners say, hey, here's 2 to 3 million of the equity, and I have the other 5 sourced, you're going downhill from there, right? It just leaves the
yeah,
last 3 million to source, and that'll come in pretty easy. And again, I think we would, once that all happens, fully go institutional.
mhm,
Timeline
mhm.
for that, I would say probably this summer.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. What's been the biggest sort of challenge or most surprising thing that's maybe happened in the last, let's just say 24 months, maybe 18 months, something like that? Just like the most challenging thing or thing that you really had to overcome, or just where you're like, wow, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty easy one. We ordered 6 of these boats from the company that builds them. They built us the 2 that were less applicable to our business, the recreational boats, and we were waiting for the 4 commercial boats. And unfortunately, that company went under. And so here we were, we had raised a ton of financing and gone, you know. And so we basically had to figure out we are either shutting this thing down or we are doubling down. And this is almost exactly a year ago, March of last year. And we spent a few months working on it. We brought a bunch of investors together and we went in and we acquired our boat builder. Right. So
Mm,
think about what that means. We are effectively a pre-seed or a seed stage pre-revenue company raising capital to continue to operate. And then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out
yeah.
and we had to figure it out and we had to figure it out quick. We got lucky. Definitely an angle of luck here. We had some really, really good investors who saw the vision. They saw that we could pick this company up for effectively pennies on the dollar and
Hmm.
build it into something very, very big. Not only as the boat builder itself, but also in what it meant for Arkhouse. And so that upfront capital is going to pay off exponentially over the next few years. 5 was easily the toughest year of my life because of that exactly. But we've now come out of it on the back end. We're building with the best builder in America. We have easily the #1 design studio in the world, Pininfarina. We did a partnership with Ferretti Yachts, the largest yachting group in the world. I mentioned we have a Formula One team partnership that we're working on right now. And then the resorts, all of those
Yeah.
other things are small pieces that add up to the big opportunity, which is rewards. You know, with some elbow grease and some dollars, we basically in 2025 we bought our future, and now we're looking to scale up into that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, how close did you, just you personally, get to being like, you know what, let's just wrap this up. That we're done. I mean, did you ever get to there, or were you always like, no, I know there's an idea, I know it's here. Like I can see it, I can see the vision. I guess where were you personally in some of those
Yeah,
those nights that you were thinking about?
my wife's friend once made a comment about me. And she just said, "You are a bulldog with a bone in your mouth. If you have something, you're not letting it go."
Yeah.
And I think there have been multiple times where I mean, against all odds, we've looked at it and just been like, there's no possible way to survive this.
Hmm.
But
Right.
instead of just saying, let's shut it down, we just said, well, we're going to fight until the very, very last second. And, there's been three or four of those, the big one I just told you about,
Yeah.
but we've always gone past it. I had a VC yesterday come back around that we hadn't talked to in a while. And literally on a call, I just told me, they go, we've been watching you and your team's grit is, you know, pretty impressive. We don't know if we've seen anything like that. So we
Yeah.
definitely want to re-engage, so TBD what happens there, but I don't
Hmm.
think I ever got to the point where he said voluntarily I was shut down. I've always
Yeah.
said I will
Yeah. Yeah.
fight until my feet are in concrete and can't do it.
Yep. I'm gonna definitely be clipping this end thing because I coach so many founders on, like, you don't know where the collisions are, you don't know what they're watching. So it may have been a no a year ago or 6 months ago. That doesn't mean that there's so many other variables that you just don't know where they come back around, or they see you actually handle that, or they see your real grit or your real determination to make this go. They're going to feel like their money is more safe, and they're just going to have the feeling's going to change, timing could change. So there's so many things. Well, now where can we send people? I'd love to make sure I have all the links in the show notes, but if somebody wants to dive in, learn a little bit more, where should they go?
The two places are our website or our Wefunder page, which actually talks a lot more about the business model. Our website is really more of a consumer facing. We don't have much investment information on there. So our website is just arkhaus.co, arkhaus.co. But really the Wefunder is what's going to give you the back end of the story and what's happening. And that's just wefunder.com/Arkhaus.
Awesome. For all my listeners out there, you guys know this is not our first rodeo. I'll have all the links in the show notes. Obviously, go check it out. Sam, I've been watching from my vantage point. I love what you're doing. I think it's a really unique model. I was super excited to get more in the weeds on it with this type of conversation. Even for me, it makes me even more excited about what you guys are working on when I get into the nitty gritty of stuff. So all my listeners out there, go check it out. Connect with Sam probably over on LinkedIn, or just go find it. Dive into this world. Really cool stuff. And I can't wait to see where you guys go with this. It's really cool. I appreciate
Thanks,
your time.
Jeff.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you having me on, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Awesome.
Take care.